Hey guys, Ali here. How are you doing? So, my first visual novel is complete, and I enjoyed myself. It's definitely not really a game genre that I thought I would ever dabble in at all. I didn't think I would find any enjoyment in it whatsoever, but while playing Neocab, I really had a good time, and I also learned a little bit about how my imagination works as well. Now, I have some thoughts and feelings on the experience that I would like to share with you today. So let's dig into that right now. Neocab is a nicely illustrated, heavily stylized interactive novel that takes place in a future version of Los Hoyos, which apparently is a real city in New Mexico. Honestly, I had no idea. I mean, before I actually looked it up, just in case, I thought it was a completely made-up place. But then again, I never claimed to be the most cultured person on the internet now, did I? The story has our main character, Lena, packing up and moving her life to the city. She has second thoughts and some baggage for sure, what with Los Hoyos being a fully automated city without much need for people to drive taxis themselves anymore, but she stays high in spirits at the thought of moving in with her best friend. However, upon arriving and meeting up with her best friend Savvy, things start to go a little bit off track. The story then takes Lena to different parts of the city, driving different people from A to B, taking on as much information as possible about the city and its goings-on. This information is then used to help investigate the derailing of her new life plans. The game is presented in wonderfully vibrant colour and a lovely, stylised, cel-shaded comic book kind of fashion. The artwork is impressive, with every character you meet having their own visual characteristics that really have them stand apart from one another. The majority of the game takes place in Lena's taxi, which is probably the most bland environment in the whole game. There are some other environments that are illustrated as well, like motels and nightclubs, but the taxi, with its blues and blacks that make up the interior of it, it's just like sitting in any low-budget plastic bucket with wheels in the real world. Nothing special. But for Neocab, this isn't necessarily a bad thing, I don't think. It gives a dull enough backdrop to ensure that the characters sitting in the car really pop in the scene. The clash here is actually quite striking, playing nicely into the novel vibes and suits the cyberpunky noir atmosphere the game broadcasts throughout, especially when it comes to how those street lamps illuminate the interior of the car briefly when driving past them. A lovely little touch. The sound in this game, well, there's not much to say here, honestly. There are a couple of forgettable sound effects here and there for when Lena interacts with her phone, or perhaps when any significant movement is made in the car itself, like pulling over for a fare or perhaps pulling over to drop them off. The magic, though, is in the soundtrack. Now, it may be my complete lack of experience when it comes to visual novels as a genre of games here, but am I the only one that noticed how spot on the triggers for the soundtrack were within the scenes of the game? Whether it be for a change of tone in the conversation that's happening at the time, or a change in what's going on outside of the confines of the taxi, it just seemed to be perfect timing every single time. On a technical level, I can see how this is done, but still, it took me by surprise anyway. The actual music from the soundtrack, which I sadly do not own to let you listen to it in this section, is a lovely set of pieces that really drive home the intent of the dialogue as you read through it in any given scene, increasing one's immersion in an otherwise stationary scene on your TV or monitor. It really helps bring the words to life and helps sell the futury feel of the game as well. The mechanics in the game are pretty simple. It's a novel, so it's all about the words, and there are plenty of places where you can choose what words you express throughout the story. It's an interesting battle, actually, that goes on throughout the game. You have conversations with passengers in the game as you are trying to get to know them, and in some cases looking for specific information, while at the same time trying to obtain more general information about the city and those who live in it. All while making sure you don't piss off your passengers too much so that they give you a bad review. A bad review in the game usually means less money, due to maybe the lack of a tip, and you need to make sure that you always have enough money to keep your taxi charged and, of course, afford a place to stay when your shift is over at the end of each day. Oh, and then there's also making sure that you don't piss yourself off too much too. The Feel Grid bracelet is your emotional compass. Exchanges with other characters and their outcomes can really affect your mood and, in turn, your potential for expression, depending on whether or not you're happy, angry, or perhaps feeling a little blue. The aim is to keep as balanced an emotional state as possible, but that's not always easy. So at times there are certain dialogue choices that you can't quite express because your feelings in that given moment just get in the way. So, you have the people, you have the events within the city going on, and you have your emotional state to navigate, as well as the story itself. I really enjoyed the story, and despite it being kind of dark and a little disturbing at times, there was a wholesome quality to it. I don't know if wholesome is the right word to use exactly, but it's one I'm going to use, as the setting and the people just made me feel, well, kinda cozy actually. The story put you, as the player, in a position where you want to talk to everyone and do everything, but you have limitations in place that force you to accept the fact that you can't have all the facts before making a move or a judgment. However, I didn't feel like I missed out as a result. If anything, with all these other options and possibilities that I undoubtedly missed in my playthrough, I would be quite curious to see how the story develops on replays of the game, choosing different options and talking to different characters. Talking of the characters, I did quite like them, mostly interesting and quite diverse. But what struck me the most is how I felt somewhat connected to a number of them. Savvy, for example, and perhaps a little bit of a spoiler warning here, so I would skip forward about 20 seconds if you don't want to hear it. I've known people like Savvy in my life. The kind of selfish type who would perhaps inflate their own drama to make it everyone's problem, only then to get in touch with you when they need something from you and then treat you like crap if you decide not to play ball. Very emotionally volatile. Savvy, and almost every other character I kind of had exchanges with in the game, they gave me the impression that these characters were based on real people. But I guess that's what Writing 101 kind of tells you, right? And now I guess it's time for my final thought on Neocab as an experience. As I mentioned at the start of the series, this is the first visual novel I've ever played. And I'll tell you what, I'm very glad I did. It really played with my imagination in a different way compared to the more conventional way of playing a video game. It's quite weird though, because I'm not really much of a reader, at least not fiction anyway. Long story short, I used to get told quite a lot when I was growing up in school that I wasn't always getting what a writer is trying to communicate correct. As if, there's only one way to interpret someone's creative expression through books and painting and stuff, right? Anyway, as stupid as that sounds, it happens so much that I kind of just stopped trying and just believe that my imagination just doesn't work like other people's. It was at that point that I swapped books for video games, and to be fair, I've had a smile on my face ever since. But as I've gotten older, I've noticed that I do actually have an imagination. Quite an active one actually, so long as I have at least a little detail or a little priming to kick off from. For example, I was in a band for 9 years, and we wrote a lot of music in that time. But one common thing that was very clear looking back on it now is that I never really had a lot of confidence or belief in my own ideas if they were ideas that came from a vacuum. But I had all the confidence possible when building on an idea that originated from someone else, really helping to flesh it out, get as much as we can out of it, and build it into something better than it was. And I guess that makes me more of a producer than an artist, where an artist would kind of manifest a concept of something that they have in their head out of seemingly nothing, whereas a producer mindset is more specialised in getting significant outcome out of small beginnings. I think I fall more into the second category there than I do the first. So in the context of Neocab, I have the visual elements on the screen, obviously, and I have dialogue to read on the screen, because it's a visual novel. but there's so much that both of them are not saying. So kicking off from those limited details lets my imagination come out to play and start inferring things about a person or a situation that wouldn't otherwise really appear to me in my head if I didn't have one of those cues. Well, I guess everything I just said is kind of saying that I like books with pictures in them. But regardless, combine all of this with my reading out loud, which I do prefer doing as stories just seem more real, I think that's the right word. I have to say, I had a great time with this game. Sure, the story of NeoCab isn't the most amazing thing that's ever been written, but the way it was written leaves a lot of room for replayability and the exploration of different outcomes. In fact, I'd say that this game would make a good foundation for a teen sci-fi movie or TV show. Due to the exaggerated and very stereotypical traits that these characters possess a lot of the time, and they are very on the nose at times, almost towing the line of cringe when you think about it with all of their personas. This kind of approach is often perfect for entertaining teen/family oriented movies and TV shows. That kind of larger than life kind of show that discusses serious issues without going deep enough into them for it to get too challenging on the mind of the viewer. NeoCab is a colourful depiction of a dark, noir-like future setting that discusses some really serious stuff. Privacy, conspiracy, tribalism, consumerism, it's all here. And it's this layman's opinion that NeoCab did a good job of giving the player the cliff notes of the conversations without drowning them in the details, a bunch of relatable characters, and uses them well to get the story points across for anyone to enjoy, with a side helping of a soundtrack that provides a lovely, comfortable cushion for the player to settle themselves down onto and enjoy the ambience of what's going on around them. And if you don't like how the game unfolds, play it again and just choose differently. As a side note, and I honestly never thought I would ever hear myself say this, but I actually really enjoyed reading this game out loud. I know I've done that kind of thing in other games in the past before, but the only mechanic in this game is reading the story. I've always preferred kind of reading stuff out loud when I actually go to read anything, at least when it comes to fiction. Non-fiction not so much, but definitely with fiction, because it allows me to kind of really place myself in there and kind of immerse myself on a further level that I just can't really do if I just read in my head. Compared to a normal interactive video game, a visual novel it doesn't really have anything that's distracting you from that goal. So it could be that this is something that I might want to explore a little bit further moving into the future. Perhaps I should explore what constitutes a good visual novel and a bad visual novel and try and break down the nuances of those types of games too. What do you think about that? Would you like to see more chill, sort of laid-back visual novel type experiences every now and again on the channel? In fact, what did you think of NeoCab specifically? Let me know in the comments down below the video. For now though, I just want to say thank you very much for watching this video. I hope it gave you a good insight into NeoCab and perhaps visual novels in general to let you know whether or not these are the kind of projects that you are maybe suited well for, or perhaps there's something that you want to steer clear of entirely. If you watched the NeoCab Let's Play series, thank you very much for watching that as well. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I certainly did. It was a blast. I really enjoyed having a shot of that game. I'm going to go away now and leave you to the rest of your day. But until the next video, take care, and I'll see you again very, very soon.